Okay, so last night I was down here working on this motor and was able to get the trigger to work and fire, and things looked great, and I was happy to see that, but something just didn't seem right, and it was bugging me, and the more I thought about it after I went up to bed, the more I realized that there's something really not right with this motor and the timing. And it actually looks like the timing's right where it should be. Let me show you what I mean. So you can see right now that larger of the black lines right there is lined up perfectly with this line here on the cowling. And that's the 2 degree before top dead center mark. So that is almost right on exactly where this is firing right now. Right there. Actually went a little past it, but I can actually get it to stop right on there. So, right now in the throttle fully down closed or idle position, it's at 2 degrees before top dead center, which I believe is right where it's supposed to be. Here's the problem. The problem is that those of you who've been watching the series right along know that when this line is lined up with the 2 degree before top dead center mark on this sticker, that is in fact not really the 2 degrees before top dead center position. Because through laborious testing with the indicator mounted in there, I was able to determine that this point right here, let's see, where is it? That 0 right there, okay, if I put it on the 0, that is not when the piston is in fact at top dead center. Not at all. And that I was able to determine that in fact it's at top dead center when this line over here with the 3 dots is here. Okay? So if that's when this is at top dead center, then 2 degrees before top dead center would actually be more like about there. Okay? So I'm supposed to be firing that spark plug number 1 here, and instead I'm way over here. So in reality, let's see, bring it back. Right there, okay? In reality, if I go back to where I had my homemade timing pointer before, which I had this little block up against this flat in here. So if I hold this in position right here, the pointer is actually pointing at just to the right of the 21 degree mark. So what I'm in fact probably at is around 20 degrees before top dead center. So right now it's firing at around 20 degrees before top dead center, which is not right. Not right at all. But it's interesting that these lines are lining up exactly right. It's making me think that maybe somebody who was working on this engine before I got to it was trying to time this thing based on this line lining up with that sticker. And I think that they were not aware of the fact that what I believe has happened is that this piece or the flywheel has been changed out by somebody. In other words, going back to that discussion I had a few episodes ago, that you either should have this sticker here or this sticker here, but not both. And that this line right here is not meant to work with that sticker. This sticker is supposed to work with a timing pointer, which is completely non-existent in this model. So, how do you like them apples? So I just did another quick check, and what I did was pulled this lever all the way back, and it's spring loaded, so you gotta kind of hold it. Idiot. Okay, let's try that again now that I secured my power supply so I don't drop it on the floor again. The throttle linkage here. This is fully closed, so this, you can actually see the butterfly is opening, so this is going towards full throttle. So if I pull this all the way over, and it's spring loaded, so I got to kind of hold it that way with one hand, and then I rotate this back and I come back towards the 21 degree mark. It's firing right at the point where this mark is lined up with the 21 degree, which again, you would think that's great. What did we talk about? We talked about that on the sticker here it's at 23 degrees, but that was before we knew about that with the modern fuels that they actually recommend like 21 degrees. So that looks like exactly where we want to be, except for one problem, and it's a big one. The fact that we know that when we set this 0 to that mark, it is not really at top dead center, which means that all of these other things that look perfectly fine are completely out of whack. I betcha somebody was having a hell of a time getting this thing running. That might explain why the carburetors look so clean. It might explain why there was like that adjustment screw on that carburetor was completely out of whack. I think there was just somebody just did not know that their timing was completely wrong. Alright, so what I just did now, without going through all the trouble of setting up the indicator stand all over again and redoing everything that I already proved to myself, just to prove to myself with a quick test that I'm not losing my mind, I stuck the screwdriver in here, and I'm touching the top of the piston here, and I crank over with the ratchet. I'm pulling this up, and I can feel it. I can feel it pushing the screwdriver out. I can actually watch the screwdriver. I can see when I get to the point where the screwdriver stops going out and where it just about is going to start going in again. That little plateau at the top there. That little small duration of rotation between where it's no longer traveling up but hasn't started going back down again. I can actually sense that just by putting a screwdriver in there. And in fact, I've actually seen on some of the forums, there are a couple of the veteran guys who work on these motors who talk about how they just use a pencil and stick it in there, and that's how they find top dead center on these things, that they've got the feel. If I really wanted to, I could put the indicator back on there, but all I'm going to end up doing in the end is proving what I knew from my previous experimentation, which is that this line with the 3 dots, when it is lined up with this line right here, that's the true top dead center, which coincidentally seems to correspond to almost perfectly when I have a timing pointer in here pointing to it. It almost perfectly points to this 0 degree. So my question is, what am I going to do to fix this? Well, what I need to do is I guess the way to handle this is going to be to rotate this to 2 degrees before top dead center. for starters, I think. Let me think about this. Well, it's been a couple more days since I was down here scratching my head over this timing issue, and I've come to the conclusion that the timing is way out on this thing. I moved the stand out a little bit more so I can get a little bit more overhead light on this side, and I set up a mag mount light so they can really get in on this area here. Now there are two nuts, bolts in here, small ones, that are elongated holes, and I believe that's where the first setting is adjusted from, and I think that's what's way out. So let me show you where that's at. Okay, so I know that these three dots right here, this line with the three dots right here, it corresponds to this sticker. And I also know that this label right here would correspond to a timing pointer that would have been visible through this hole if it existed. And it's roughly in the middle there. So, if I bring this back, and of course the direction of rotation is clockwise. So, if we're just looking at that line with the three dots right there, we're coming in this direction on the label here towards top dead center, which is this line right here. Okay, it's marked actually piston TDC, right, number 1 right there. So this 4 degree line is 4 degrees before top dead center. So that would be advanced, timing advanced 4 degrees, 10 degrees, and so on. So remember, my 3 dotted line is way over here right now. Right there is about, I'm at about 25 degrees, 20, 18, right there, bang, right there. Now there isn't a line there on this label. So you can see this is the 20 degree mark, and there's 20, 25, so we're going down in that direction. So right now the 3 dotted line is right about there. So I can estimate that that's probably at around 17 degrees. So right now it's 17 degrees advance. The problem is that right now this is in the throttle is actually in the what's supposed to be the idle position. So 17 degrees advance is way too advanced for a start. And I can almost confirm that over here. Now you'll see that, you know, imagine if the pointer was right here in the middle where my fingernail is. Okay, that's lining up with an area on the sticker to the right of this black mark, which is 21 degrees. But because now we're looking at the sticker that's on the flywheel, the numbers actually go up in this direction and go down in this direction. So because we're to the right of that, it's going to be less than 21 degrees. There's the 10 degree mark right there. And you can see that I'm, you know, halfway between those two would be 15, and I'm a little bit to the left of that. So again, right around 17 degrees is what it looks like. Well, on the advice of one of my contributors and viewers, whose name escapes me at the moment, so I'll have to, I apologize for that. But he basically recommended that I check the public library to see if I can't find a service manual for this model. Well, you know, I went online, and here in Massachusetts, a lot of our libraries are linked together, maybe all of them for all I know. Public libraries are linked together with an online system, so it's kind of great. You can actually do a search online, and you can see what's available at each branch. So my local branch didn't really have much, but a couple towns over, there was a book that was listed. And it was this book here, which I went there and took out. This is the Outboard Motor Service Manual 11th edition by Intertech. This is volume 2. There's a volume 1 and a volume 2. Volume 1 is for the smaller motors. This is volume 2 covering motors with 30 horsepower and above from 1969. So, figuring that this is probably about a 1972 motor, I figured this held out some promise. So I took it over to the table and sat down and quickly saw that there was a whole section in here on the Mercury inline 6-cylinder engines. That's all I needed to see to make the decision to take this book out. Well, what I decided to do is, before I go messing with this adjustment down here, I wanted to revisit my whole timing belt situation here. Because it occurs to me that if I'm one tooth off, that could explain all of my problems here. Because I mean, I seem to be way out from where I should be as far as that timing goes. I think for this model, I should be like around 4 or 5 degrees. And like I said, I figure right now I'm around 18, which means I'm 13 degrees off. So I'm toying with the idea of moving this pulley one tooth counterclockwise and seeing what happens. Now, if I do that, the weird thing is that's going to screw up my arrows, or my alignment here, as it supposedly is supposed to be according to what I've been reading online. There's a little cast arrow in there, and when I'm supposed to bring this over so that this line with the 3 dots on it lines up with the center line right here. Right now the cast arrow is almost straight on, pointing to the crankshaft, maybe a little to the right, which is supposedly, if you can't get it to point straight on, you're supposed to have it pointing a little bit to the right. And that pointing to the left would cause all kinds of problems with timing. Well, guess what? In order for me to, if I rotate this more to the left, so if the arrow is going more, which would more clockwise, with the arrow pointing more to the right, if I offset it that much, that's actually advancing it even further. And that would give me even higher advance. I want lower, so I want to go counterclockwise. I'm going to go one tooth counterclockwise and see what happens. I got to move the camera to get this belt off. So that's what it looks like when I move the when I move it over one tooth. And I don't know if you can tell, but that arrow is just to the left of pointing straight at the crankshaft, which, according to what I was reading online, which I believe was an excerpt from a service manual somebody had posted, that's actually not correct. Well, here's the problem. That might not be correct, but I'll be darned if now my timing seems to be right where it should be. I just tried it. I haven't put the timing pointer back on. I don't have the cowling on, so I can't see what that line right there is going to line up with. But right now I seem to be in that 2 to 5 degrees, somewhere in that range. Alright, so now watch what happens if I reinstall my homemade timing pointer. Now, I still have the same size spacer block taped to this. I haven't changed anything. So I can actually, with some degree of confidence, know that this homemade timing pointer position should be perfectly fine if I just hold it right there against that flat like that. And it's pretty much lining up dead with that tooth. So if I go back before and then start coming towards top dead center, it's almost right on that tooth, and that corresponds almost perfectly with that large black line, the left of these 2 large black lines, which is the 4 degree before top dead center mark, which is So essentially here in the book, it talks about speed control linkage, it talks about synchronizing it and everything. And then it goes on and it says, use the system following the sequence outlined in the appropriate following paragraphs. Well, then you got to kind of hunt through, because first it covers the 1000 SS. Then it goes on to the model 1250. And then here we go on this page. We've got the model 900, 1150, 1350, 1400, and 1500. I believe we've got a model 1150 because according to the chart at the beginning of the chapter, I know that the one of the guards right there, it says 115 horsepower clearly on it. And if you look down here, you'll see that in 1970, they made the model 1150 from 70 through, looks like up to 78. Then in 79, they introduced the model 115, which is quite a different animal than this one. So, going back and looking down here at the horsepower, it shows that the model 1150 and the 115 were both the 115 horsepower models. Well, I know I don't have a model 115. There's no way that this is that new based on serial number. I was able to determine based on serial number this is an older one. Okay, so, and it's got the timing belt. It doesn't have the whatchamacallit, the other system. So, where was I? So here I am down here. Refer to Thunderbolt ignition, blah, blah, blah. Well, it turns out you're actually not supposed to be able to do this with the motor off statically like I'm doing. According to the book, this book here, they actually want you to do this one. It's supposed to be in a test tank, and it's supposed to be, put it in gear and yada, 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 timing light. Well, I am going to get to that eventually, but there's no way I'm going to start this thing without knowing whether or not the static timing is even in the ballpark. I don't even want to think about what would happen if you were trying to start this thing and it was 18 degrees advanced. I mean, the piston's not quite all the way up and it's firing. That seems pretty bad. Okay, so getting down here, serial numbers, 1150. What was my serial number again? So my serial number is a 3272624. So for below that number, we want this. Between this number and that number is where I am. I'm right here. And according to this, well, that's interesting. It should be 2 degrees before top dead center dash TDC. So what are they saying? That it should be between 2 degrees before top dead center and at top dead center? And the earlier one, it was 5 to 7 degrees. Huh. That's quite a difference.